Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, Don Spector here. Today, finally, for another IEM review after I took a look at tips the last few times. And I have for you today the Thieaudio Oracle MK1. Yes, we are talking about the OG here. This specifically because I think in terms of graphing, or like how this graphs, most people would actually more gravitate towards the MK1 than the MK2. And because the driver config is basically identical, I don't think like you really gain much more from the MK2. Maybe the crossover got a bit better, or maybe they changed in driver type here, so maybe it could be tiny better. But yeah, just how this graphs, I think Oracle MK1 is the go-to today, and that's why I'm taking a look at the OG today. And I'll be starting off with packaging and accessories. And I'm sorry, I got this unit loaned from a good friend. And yeah, hence I don't have the packaging here. Only have the accessories, which include this big carrying case. Like, that's really a big boy. Again, let me show you my mouse. So it is basically one mouse in length, one mouse in height, and like 1.4 mouse in terms of depth. So it's a big boy. And yeah, similar to most other big carrying cases, you can see it's a bit on the squishy side, so that ain't too great. And the zipper here is also absolutely nothing special. Like, it zips around smooth enough, but also not the smoothest. And then opening it, here we get a net, which keeps your accessories safe. And there's a set of tips here, which again, I'm sorry, I don't know if these are all included tips, but it looks like you get one pair of white silicone tips. And then this is here a pair of, I think this is foam tips actually. Yeah, these might be the foam tips here, which look like they come in M and S. So that's nice. At least you have a variation there. And yeah, of course, when you get the IEM and the cable. And yeah, that's pretty much I can say so far about packaging and accessories. Next, let's talk about IEM Build. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. If you have seen one semi-custom Raisin Shell IEM, you have seen most of them. The only difference between most of the IEMs there is that, yeah, sometimes you have a metal nozzle included or integrated in the Raisin, sometimes not. And Thieaudio here decided to include a metal nozzle, which I don't like or dislike. It's a nozzle, right? Like, I don't have many preferences there. And then I'll also start with the nozzle here. And as you can see, yeah, the metal mesh here seems to be well enough integrated. And yeah, you can't see the drivers through that. It's relatively dense. And yeah, the nozzle itself, you cannot see any seams in the Raisin. So also that seems to be well integrated. And when we look on the inside, here it actually says Oracle very nicely. And yeah, and I will not remove the cable here now, but this is the 2-pin connector. It's flush. And the IEM itself does not have any R like lettering on it, but it does make up for that with this nice color-coded protective grill over the pressure hole here, which is similar to what I've seen at the Yanyi Canon, for instance. And I definitely do like this more than just the L and R. It's just easier to distinguish blue and red here. And then let's come to the, I think, the nicest part of the Oracle, and that's the faceplate. I'm not sure how that is visible in the camera, but this is a really stylish faceplate and probably among the best that I have seen so far. Because it has this like pearly or pearl effect here when you have the lettering Thieaudio. And then these particles here are kind of like three-dimensional. It's like not so easy to see in camera, but they don't have the same height. And that then makes it look like a very nice faceplate. And yeah, also as you can see here, like they're differently colored, and I would say they're probably unique from unit to unit, because yeah, this is how these are made. Like, you can usually not or never get the same result twice. So that definitely is very nice, and I like this style very much. Of course, it's like just my taste, and your knowledge may vary or your flavor may vary, but I think generally in terms of build, I have zero issues with this. This is like most other well-built Raisin IEMs, and yeah, I would say it's well built overall. And then let's quickly go to cable. And as you can see, it's directly straight and it gets smooth, or it is very smooth cable. If you just do it like this, it stays smooth immediately. Like, Oh God, after coming from the EJ07M and the Variations in the tribrid category here, this is such a relief to see a cable that does not tangle itself constantly, that does not get weird and kind of never gets straight. This is really well done cable, and I just, from the smoothness standpoint, it doesn't get better than this. You literally just do it like this, you flop it, it's straight. So nice to use. Also nice to use the connector here. This is for a 3.5 version, and yeah, it's shiny metal, and yeah, similar to the IEM itself, collects fingerprints. Well, that's how it is. But they have this nice convex shape here, so you can actually grip it, and that's very nice detail. Not so nice again, the strain relief is too hard, it's too short, it will not relieve any strain. It's basically useless, we could just omit it completely. But going up here, you can see the 4 cores. Those are medium thick, I would say about a tiny bit thicker than what you would probably get with the Variations or the EJ07M. But because those have only 2 cores, here it just comes off as, yeah, a bit thicker overall feeling and looking. The cable itself, though, seems not to be pure silver for all of the cable believers here. It's just silver plated. That basically doesn't mean anything, but yeah, looks silver all the way going through the splitter here, which follows the same style of the reflective silver shiny splitter, and it also has the same like shaping going on. That is nice attention to detail. And on top, first let's talk about the chin slider, and why this is actually moving smoothly, as you can see here. This is a very well integrated chin slider, possibly the best I've looked at in years. This is really, it moves easily, but when you want it to stay, like just with this bit stressed like this, it just stays in place. And that is really nice. I really can just slide it up all the way until I need it, and then it just stays in place really well. Like, this is really a really nice chin slider, and yeah, it actually works as intended. The 2 cores on each side here, let's quickly look at the thickness, seem to be about the same thickness as the bottom wires, which is again nice. And when we go further up to the ear hooks, whoop, that rubberization here is relatively long, as you can see, and the actual bending radius is on the medium side, a bit bigger than that, so most ears should not have any problems with the way this is bent. However, one thing I will notice again, because this is like 2 cores, this has like a more texture going on here, and if your ear is very sensitive, this could lead to some pressure spots, because yeah, it's not 1 wire, but like actually 2 with some texture. I didn't mind it that much, and when you talk about comfort later on, yeah, I think it's more the IEM than the cable that could make slight problems. And then last but not least, the connector here follows the exact same style. Let me just get the splitter up so we can see that again. So you can see it's again this slightly convex shape here, and it's shiny. But though, well, they have nice here. This is again color coded, so you can see both sides here. This does not have color, but this is red, so that's also nice, and yeah, it will be easy to find the right side whenever. Overall though, I have one slight point of critique. This cable is a bit more microphonic than I'm used to with other cables. It's not a lot, but I noticed it in day-to-day, and yeah, that's why I usually prefer to still use the chin slider, because that at least helps a bit with that. But overall, very nice cable, very good job Thieaudio, and yeah, easily beats the Variations or the EJ07M's cable without any issue. Although again, you get an interchangeable connector with the Variations. And then after we talked about the build quality, let's talk about comfort. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a big boy. Unfortunately, I don't have any other IEM here at the moment, or wait, I have, but it's completely different price range. This is the cadenza, which I would describe as medium, like maybe a bit smaller than medium sized, but you can see how big this IEM actually is. Like, this is really a chunky boy in terms of depth. You can see it in comparison, but also in terms of length or like a girth, like everything's big about this IEM. And that then in turn also means, unfortunately, if your pin is a bit smaller, this can be a bit tricky to fit in your ear. Mine isn't, so I didn't have any issue with that, but just be careful if your ear is smaller, this could be already a bit too big for you. Nice though is that this is semi-custom shaped, as you can see, and the back part here is not too much extruded, so this should fit most pinas relatively well. Also nice here. The nozzle is on the medium side. It's not too long, it's not too short. The only issue that you might encounter is that the actual casing or the shell here in my opinion, should extrude a bit farther, and then the nozzle itself could be a bit shorter, so or like the same length, so it just fits the ear canals a bit better, but are a bit deeper. Mine is not, so I had zero issues with this, and in fact I usually preferred like medium length tips, like here the Dunu S&S, or my preferred tip when we talk about comfort is actually the DD Hi-Fi ST35. That's my favorite tip on this one, and yeah, just very comfortable I am with that. However, let me notice there's a slight issue here. You will see it when I also throw out the measurements of the angle of the nozzle. And the main problem is in the, like, it just lacks the downward bend here. Let me just go to video again so you can see that. It normally, when you see like this, which is the front, right, it should also be bent a bit in that direction, like downward in this angle. That usually helps in inserting it a tiny bit better, especially when it's semi-custom. And this then, because it's not done here, leads to the IEM in your ear slightly shifting to the back, because this cable is not angled in 45-degree angle down. So which you could also do instead of angling the nozzle a bit down, you could just angle the cable a bit down. Then this will just go like this and then go over your ear a bit more comfortable. It's not done here, so unfortunately I had the problem that over time it just rotated like that and got a bit uncomfortable. Not a lot, I can still wear this for hours, but I would like to see at least the angling being done here a bit more aggressive. Like not a lot, but maybe give it like 10 degrees more, so usually works a bit better for my experience at least. And then next let's talk about isolation. And yeah, it's a chunky boy, and yeah, nozzle is not too long, so that means you usually will be able to insert it relatively deep, and you will get a good isolation with this one. In terms of your comparison, when we talk again Variations and EJ07M, theoretically Variations would most likely be the best isolating because it's like massive resin. However, because it's very sensitive to wind, I think this is still better in terms of isolation than the Variations. EJ07M should also be a bit better isolating because, yeah, it's a metal shell, it's just more dense, it just should absorb noises a bit better. But it just really depends on how far you can insert it. And yeah, with this one, I had no problems in terms of insertion depth. And so I would say it's isolating pretty damn well. And yeah, even with silicone tips, I wouldn't have a problem in most situations. Putting foam on, of course, improves things, and yeah, cat foam tip also did make this a very well isolating IEM, and I would say overall they're about the same. Like the tribrids I mentioned before, EJ07M, Variations, and this one, they all three isolate relatively well. Just depends on, yeah, if you're outside, then Variations might not be for you, and yeah, if your ear is a bit smaller, EJ07M is a bit smaller in general, so that could be a bit better fitting your pina, and that then also leads better isolation. But generally, well isolating IEM, zero problems with that. Next, drivability, and on paper, the Oracle MK1 has 106 decibel per milliwatt at 1 kilohertz with 11 ohms. Sorry. That means on paper it's pretty efficient, and you shouldn't need an external amplifier for that. Yeah, but let me just say, it says 11 ohms here, but comparing it to the Variations and the EJ07M, I think this takes a bit more power to actually be driven for the same loudness, and I also think actually this gets a bit better if you up the amount of power you put through it. It's not a lot again, like we don't talk about like night and day difference here, but I think something like the Up5 or another dongle that has a bit more output power is, I think, recommended. Like usually I listen at a volume level of like 15 or so, and with this one it's not that loud, and I need to up a bit more. Variations, for instance, I mostly had on like 13, EJ07M similar. This one needs to be upped a bit more, and yeah, it doesn't do much in terms of sound quality. So yeah, completely artificial. I think if you have a random USB-C dongle, which I fortunately have, like not a good one, just a random USB-C dongle, I think you probably get only 70% of what the Oracle is capable of. Going to something like the iPhone dongle is totally fine. Like a bit more power would probably be nice, but not needed. And yeah, when you up the power a bit more and a bit more cleanness in quotes, to something, yeah, like any better dongle that you might have hanging around, or the BTR5 or Up5 gives you then like 100%, and upping the power even more to like a real amplifier didn't give me anything. Like I didn't have the feeling that staging got improved or Soundstage or anything else. It just stayed identical there. Okay. So far about yeah, the general stuff. Let's come to the core of every review, and that's sound. And yeah, I will be throwing on graphs again so you can see for yourself. But the general sound characteristics of the Oracle I would describe as kind of U-shaped, like naturally U-shaped, maybe, yeah, but definitely U-shaped. And it's similar in terms of the general philosophy to what you also get with the Variations or the EJ07M. Although this one is the most neutral or most natural one of the bunch. Then let's start with analysis of the frequency response, and yeah, as usual we start with extension, and to my ear this extends pretty well. Like I think it manages like 15 or 70k or something like that before dipping, and it gives you a nice feeling of yeah, air on top. However, without coming off as unnatural as for instance the Yoko does, which has like crazy amounts like after 10k, which then like makes instruments come off as like more airy and more detailed, but also adds a kind of unnatural tonality to them. And yeah, this one, Oracle here does not have that. And I think it follows something similar in terms of treble extension, what you get with the EJ07M. Variation is definitively a bit worse than this one. So that means, for instance, in the Cyberpunk 2077 soundtrack, instruments came off as nicely defined, having very clear trailing ends, and yeah, a good attack as well. And generally, it came off as very nicely detailed. Going a bit further down to mid-treble, yeah, this one is a bit more relaxed where you don't get a real peak at 8k or 9k. And yeah, even for the graph does show there's a slight peak here, ever so slightly. It's not pronounced to my ear, and it comes off as very nicely balanced, and yeah, does not sacrifice the leading edge too much, or yeah, e-guitars also have a nice yeah, bite to them. A few examples I want to mention here which worked well in mid-treble. Offshore from Tashiki Katsumotsu, Look Deep With Him from Cat Temper, or Naive Secrets from the Black Side soundtrack. All nicely pronounced mid-treble without coming off as unnatural or yeah, too much in any way. Again, like also that means splash and sizzle in most soundtracks where I have cymbals come off as nicely defined without yeah, being unnatural in any way. Okay, then let's go a bit further down. Similar to Variations and EJ07M, between like 3 and 4k you have the most energy in the treble regions. However, this one is a bit shifted, not being at like 2.5 to 3k. This one is like at solid 3 to 4k, and it's also quite a few decibels less. That means this one comes definitively off as yeah, less forward in the lower treble, upper mid region, adding a bit more body to most female vocals, but also on the opposite side, costing a bit of clarity at the same time. So that means if you have a not well audible female vocalist, for instance, again, the Cyberpunk 77 soundtrack has one here, it will just come off as more, more, not forward is not the right word here, but it's more clear on soundtracks that are not so goodly mastered, not so well mastered, I mean. On the other hand, though, yeah, you have the better tonality with the Oracle one here, and maybe just one, well, let's say 2 decibels more would still be okay to my ear. But yeah, this one comes off as very natural, and I absolutely had no problems with lower treble here. Maybe a tiny bit more would be to my liking, but really it's not a lot, and you can live without with the Oracle MK1 without any EQ, in my opinion. However, because it's a bit less pronounced, like 2.5 to 3k region, I think separation in this here does suffer a bit. So that means, again, if you have a vocalist that is not so forward here, it can happen, but it comes off as, yeah, a bit lacking there, or like a bit disappearing, but it's not a lot. And yeah, because the driver config here is good, I didn't have many problems with that. Then coming to mids, and let me just, I think the graph speaks volumes here. The mids is probably the best that you will find about the Oracle MK1. It's basically flat, like there's no weird deviations from that, like the Variations has, where sometimes it can come off as a bit husky or a bit light if vocals get a bit lower pitched. Absolutely not the case with the Oracle, and overall I really like the mids with this one. Maybe even a bit better than the EJ07M, which I still said had better mids than the Variations. Maybe a bit better here, but definitively also because it's, yeah, less pronounced at like 2.5k here. Maybe that also helps with just the mid presence. So again, examples here, I really liked Metallica, I liked Iron Maiden, I like Nothing More, Queen worked well, Replicant, which is like more lower pitched male vocals, everything worked flawlessly and mids are really nicely done here. Coming to bass, and again, the graph doesn't lie here, it's really clean, like there's a bass shelf just past 200 Hertz, like below 200 Hertz would be right term here. So that means you get a nice weighty bass, you get a nice clean bass, it's very well pronounced without coming off as muddy or anything problematic there. Upper bass, for people who like a bit more warmth, yeah, that will be a bit lacking. But unlike with EJ07M, slightly there, and with variations, it's not downward tilted in the mids and upper bass. So that means you have a bit more warmth here, and that usually makes bass guitars, for instance, come off as a bit better balanced. It's not a lot to my ear, and usually most fusion jazz tracks that I listen to from Jun Fukamashi, for instance, like they work also fine with all of the others, but here they just come off as having a bit more energy, a bit more warmth, a bit more pleasant. And yeah, coming to mid bass from here, yes, similar race to most other like well-tuned IEMs. So you have a decent amount of mid bass, but still sub bass is more pronounced. And it's not as much pronounced as it would be on EJ07M. So generally, I think EJ07M punches more. It has a bit more like heft to it in the mid bass notes. And when we talk about quality, yeah, unfortunately, the Oracle doesn't have the best dynamic driver in. It's definitely a bit slower. It has more difficulties in rendering details than the EJ07M. But because it has more mid-bass energy and also more upper bass energy than variations, it just comes off as a bit more punchy. It's a bit more fun overall listening and not so clinical. And when we go from here to sub-bass, it's pronounced, it's very well audible, and it manages like 2 minutes 15 with some texture in Interstellar's Mountains, which is a benchmark track. So it's also very well done, and yeah, I didn't have any problems with anything in the bass region here whatsoever. Again, but let me summarize here, bass, the quality of the driver is not the greatest in this price region, and you definitively get better things on EJ07M or variations. Even for variations, because of its tuning, it just doesn't come off as mid-bass heavy and it can't really like punch that hard. And yeah, generally I think variations is probably the worst sounding in terms of just pure quantity in mid-bass, but because it has such a strong sub-bass, it just rumbles better here and it has better note weight. And yeah, note weight, also a general topic here, definitively I think best on EJ07M, followed by variations, and then yeah, last of the bunch would be Oracle. Next, technicality-wise, let's talk about soundstage, layering, and imaging. And I think I can make this short. This is a solid contender here. It does have a decent soundstage. Not the biggest, not the smallest. Maybe a bit bigger than it's bigger than variations, but also that was not the strongest point in my opinion for them. And also imaging-wise, variations was not the best. So I think this one definitively does better there. But again, EJ07M has a bigger stage and it still images a bit better to my hearing. So yeah, it's alright. It's like in the mid of them, but not the best. Layering, yeah, it's alright. You get mostly 5 layers and it's similar to what you get with the other IEMs. Like it doesn't really stand out positive or negative there. Then separation, dynamics, and coherence. And again, I can make this short. Variation separates so well, like easily beats the two others, and followed by EJ07M, approximately on the same level as the Oracle. Maybe EJ07M a slight benefit there, most likely due to it having more energy at 2.5K, but it's really not a lot, and yeah, we are fine in terms of separation. Dynamics, I think they're all pretty much in the same ballpark, like they're decently dynamic, not like a good single dynamic driver thing, but it's definitely still well done and easily beats most pure balanced armature sets that I've heard so far. And coherence, including timbre. Yeah, coherence is in tribrid. If you want to listen for it, you can hear its coherence, specifically at lower volumes, is not the greatest. But generally, I didn't notice as much as I noticed, for instance, in the variations. That definitively on low volume, you can hear the 3 driver types working like independently. This one is definitively more natural there, and yeah, just even at low volume comes off as yeah, more coherent. Upping volume a bit, I still think it's a bit more coherent than variations, and has similar qualities than the EJ07M here. Although I would say in terms of timbre, it's kind of a tie. The EJ07M overall to my ear, like over the whole spectrum, sounds a bit more natural, but it has a bit more, E-style trimmer on top, while this one has a slightly more pronounced BA timbre, which could be because, yeah, in comparison from lower treble to mid-treble, there's more mid to upper treble happening compared to 2.5K that you get at Variations. So that could make this region sound more BA-like than it would be with other sets. But generally it's not a lot, and I think you will be fine in terms of timbre with this one without any issue. And same with Coherence. And that already brings me to the verdict. And even in almost mid of 2023, the OG, the Oracle, the first hype tribrid, one of the medium priced hype tribrids, let's say it like that, is still very good. It sounds great. It is not the best performing technical tribrid at this price point with like high certainty, but because it's tuned so well and it comes off as generally more natural sounding than the competition, which follows Harman a bit more, I like it very much, and it does not have real flaws to my ear. Like some could argue you would like more bass, you would like a bit more lower mids, you would like a bit more upper treble, a bit more mid treble, or like some say a bit more 2.5K in this region. But this all comes at the cost of just not sounding as natural, and that is what the Oracle really does well. It sounds so natural to my ears without having any issues where I would really say, okay, like I want more 8K, I want more 6K, or I want more 2.5K. Like I just don't think it's really needed, and this one strikes me as so balanced. I also don't see a reason why I would get the MK2, which has more upper treble and more mid treble. It's already so good here, like I don't need more, just keep the OG, that would be my recommendation. If you want Oracle, I might still try the MK2 at some point, but just looking at the graph, I think will be pretty tough for Oracle MK2 to be better than MK1. And after that, I would say if you are in the market for tribrids and you want to spend 500, all three, but I listed EJ07M, Variations, and Oracle are good options. My personal thing would still be EJ07M, but it's very close, and then followed by Oracle and on last place Variations. But because Variations sometimes is actually like 150 euros cheaper than Oracle or EJ07M, I think I would still pick Variations then. But assume you can get all of them for 500. It's much more difficult decision. And with that, I hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, if you have criticisms, if you have recommendations, please leave a comment. And with this, Don Spector out.